I'm Thomas Baldrick at ASH 2014 in San Francisco, joined now by Dr. Michael Mauro. He is from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. Thanks for stopping by, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, so before we get to talking about clinical research, let's talk fashion. What's the deal with the bow tie? How long has this been your thing?
It's been a long time, and once you get started with something, I think people often expect it. I often get asked, "Do you own any long ties?" In fact, I do. But so I think it's become associated with me. So it's stuck.
I'm sure it helps you stand out with patients too. All right, so let's talk about, we're looking at the efficacy and safety of Ponatinib. Can you revisit the phase 1 and 2 PACE trial so we can get people up on what that was, and then we'll go to where you are today?
Sure. So the phase 1 trial of Ponatinib started many years ago. We have actually data that'll come out with a median follow-up of more than 4 years for all the patients. And that is a classic phase 1 trial, looking at it broadly in hematologic malignancies. The focus was on pH-positive leukemia. In fact, the focus was even more so on chronic phase CML, because the majority of patients that remain on that study at this point have chronic phase CML. And we learned our classic phase 1 endpoints about the maximally tolerated dose. We definitely have learned a lot about safety in that trial. But I think our conclusions are that the good news is that there are patients continuing on that therapy from the phase 1 trial in long-term remission. So despite all the things that we've needed to be more thoughtful about with Ponatinib, the phase 1 study is giving us good long-term data. The phase 2 trial was a much broader trial looking at a single dose in all phases of pH-positive leukemia, and there's kind of the same conclusions have been made. We see now 3 years of follow-up with patients in chronic and accelerated phase doing very well, patients with select mutations for various reasons doing very well, and we're asking very specific questions about mechanisms of action of side effects, the impact of side effects, how to best use Ponatinib.
What's the focus of the follow-up data you have presented this ASH conference?
So at ASH 2014, we have long-term follow-up from the phase 1 trial. We have long-term follow-up specifically of patients with a T315I mutation, which is a select mutation which we know renders patients resistant to all other available kinase inhibitors. When Ponatinib was introduced and developed, it was the only drug of an oral tyrosine kinase type that would affect such a mutation. So I think the messages from phase 1 are showing us that, again, not a trivial number of chronic phase CML patients respond over the long term and can continue on therapy for 4, 5, 6 years. The updated data with regards to the PACE trial is also addressing some of the same questions about which patients respond best over the long term. And I think there we're learning that chronic and accelerated phase patients can have a high rate of long-term remission. We have activity in, of course, blast phase and pH-positive ALL, but it may not be as durable. But that's not necessarily a significant surprise. And again, we're looking at in other presentations at ASH 2014 about potential mechanisms of action on vascular biology and other specific questions.
In your view, what does the future look like for Ponatinib?
I think Ponatinib really has a place in the treatment of pH-positive leukemia. When a patient has very limited other options and they're facing risks of conventional chemotherapy, allogeneic stem cell transplantation as a required treatment, offering a highly effective oral agent that is generally well tolerated, aside from a fractionally increased and somewhat chronic risk of arterial occlusive events, that's an acceptable trade-off for many patients. I think proof of that was when Ponatinib was briefly held from us with regards to prescribing authority. There was a significant push for prescribing physicians to want to access the drug through single patient IND exemptions, meaning get the medication on a compassionate use from the manufacturer. So clearly there's an unmet need. Clearly there's a patient population that's proper to be treated with Ponatinib, and I think with time we're going to learn a lot more about how to understand and mitigate the risk we might have associated with vascular toxicity.
Well, you'll be at the front of it. We wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.